Atari 50, the 50th anniversary celebration on the PS5. Is that what it's called? Atari 50, the anniversary celebration on the PS5. Like I said, if you want to see me review each and every one of the games on this compilation, go find the review for this. I did it on my channel. This is just a compilation of the games from like Atari's past 50 years. It has like arcade games, console games, and even games that were never released before. There are handheld games on here. In total, there's 104 games on the compilation. And Digital Eclipse did this, and they've been kind of like killing it with their compilations that have come out recently. They really dive in and do a good job of showing what these games were really like on the original consoles that they came out on, and also providing a lot of good supplemental material to kind of flesh out everything around the game. Atari 50 is really kind of like laid out on a timeline where you explore through the history of Atari and all their games that they put out, you know, over the years. And I said this in the review, it's more like an interactive documentary. Tons of interviews, flyers, history, business cards, you know, commercials, things like that. It's really interesting, and I think that's the best part of this compilation, is that sort of supplemental stuff. The games more or less play very well on this compilation. A lot of them were designed to be played with like trackballs or like a spinner controller, and you're stuck playing them with like the analog stick on the PS5, and that just does not work as well, and it kind of ruins a lot of the early games like Pong and Breakout and Centipede, things like that, that really need those specialized controls that you just don't have access to on the PS5. Also, a lot of the games like repeat. I think I played like Asteroids, you know, 20 times or something. Like we played Missile Command like 60 times. Not really, that's an exaggeration, but a bunch of times, because it covers like every release on like the Atari 2600, the arcade, the Atari 5200, the Atari 7800, the Atari Lynx, the Atari Jaguar. Like it just goes on and on and on. You know, I personally feel like it's kind of like what did Atari in. They came up with like a good idea in the 80s, and then they just basically milked that sucker till like then no one wanted to buy it anymore. And I will say, all the documentary stuff is like heavily weighted towards the beginning of Atari's history. In the 80s, when they're doing like arcades and the Atari 2600, when they get towards the ender, like not the ender, the later years, like the Atari Jaguar and the Lynx and things like that, there's just not that much documentary stuff. There's very few interviews, there's very little documentation, and you're just kind of like stuck playing like mediocre game after mediocre game with none of the stuff in between it to give it context, which is what we want with this compilation. So people are saying this is like the best compilation of all time. I think this is the best compilation package of all time. I think like that documentary stuff is like a 10 out of 10. It's amazing. I wish every old compilation of games did that. It really helps you appreciate them and put them into context of what you're playing, other than just having a disc with like 80 games on it. But the games on here are pretty mediocre. The games came out to about a 5 out of 10 or so. There's just a lot of like stinker games. There's some pretty decent ones, but nothing that really stands out. Not too much. I mean, there's some good games on here. There's some 8s and 9s out of 10, you know. There's also some like 2s and 1s. So overall, the package, it's a great experience, even if the games aren't all super bangers, right? It's an 8 out of 10. I recommend this to any fan of video games that has patience for old games. So if you like those old games, or you just want to experience what it was like in the yesteryear, this isn't bad. And like there's some rare games and unreleased games that are on here that you really can't kind of play anywhere else. So I don't remember seeing any Jaguar games on any other compilations, and there's quite a few on here, including some that like I was gonna buy, and after playing them on here, I just took them off my list. So that'll save me a few $100s here and there.